In 2008, in a quiet part of Zagreb, Croatia, a team of city workers arrived at an old apartment to assess property disputes over unpaid rent and legal ownership. The flat had been locked for decades, and no one really knew who it belonged to anymore. The neighbors assumed the former tenant had moved out long ago, but when the workers finally opened the door, what they saw left them frozen. There, sitting in a dusty armchair in front of an old television set, was the skeleton of a woman. She was wearing a nightgown, resting calmly, as if she had just dozed off while watching TV. But the TV had not been turned on for decades, and her body had long since decomposed. Inside the apartment, everything looked untouched, frozen in the 1960s. Coffee cup on the table, crochet work beside the chair, a half-read newspaper dated 1966. When the police investigated, they identified the remains as Hedviga Golik, the woman who had once lived there, and according to official records, had gone missing in 1966. But the real shock was yet to come. Hedviga hadn't just gone missing. She had died inside her own apartment, and no one noticed for 42 years. She wasn't murdered. There was no sign of forced entry, no evidence of violence. It appeared that she had simply passed away while watching TV, and somehow the world just moved on without her. How is it possible that in a populated neighborhood, someone could die, and for 4 decades no one noticed? What happened to her connections? Friends? Relatives? Anyone? That's the mystery we'll unravel next. After Hedviga Golik's skeletal remains were discovered in 2008, investigators began digging into her past, literally and figuratively. What they uncovered was both bizarre and deeply tragic. Hedviga was born in 1924 and had spent most of her life in Zagreb. By the 1960s, she lived alone in her small apartment. Neighbors remembered her as quiet and reserved, someone who kept to herself and didn't socialize much. When she vanished in 1966, no alarms were raised. People thought maybe she'd gone to live with relatives, moved to another town, or simply left without informing anyone. Her neighbors never reported anything unusual, just a locked door and silence. The sad truth was that her isolation had made her disappearance invisible. Eventually, authorities declared her officially missing, but no one searched inside the apartment, probably because the rent had been paid up to a certain point, and no one had any legal reason to force entry. Over the years, as ownership of the apartment building changed hands and government housing departments reorganized, her file was lost in the system. What remained behind that locked door was a time capsule of loneliness, and a woman completely forgotten by the world. And yet the real question still lingered. If no one heard from her in decades, why didn't anyone, family, friends, government, follow up? That question would lead to even more unsettling realizations in the next chapter. As investigators tried to piece together Hedviga Golik's final years, they stumbled upon a disturbing reality. Almost nothing remained of her personal life on record. There were no recent photographs, no living family members stepped forward, no friends contacted the police after the news broke. It was as if Hedviga had quietly faded from both society and memory. Government archives confirmed she was once a factory worker, a stable job in socialist-era Yugoslavia. But after her official disappearance in 1966, her employment record ended, her medical records froze, and her name stopped appearing anywhere. She hadn't migrated, she hadn't traveled, she hadn't filed any documents. She had simply vanished. Even more chilling was how her apartment had remained sealed all those years. No one ever broke in. No one ever questioned the silence. Despite being in a shared building, her absence became normal. Her mail stopped. Her door gathered dust. Eventually, people just forgot she ever lived there. And this forgetting wasn't just social, it was bureaucratic too. For over 4 decades, no government official, social worker, or housing inspector checked in on that apartment. It was only in 2008, due to changes in property records and unpaid housing dues, that someone finally stepped in and broke open a time capsule from 1966. But the mystery remained. Why had no one noticed something was wrong for 42 years? This haunting question would lead to even deeper revelations, not just about Hedviga's case, but about a larger global issue we often ignore. The discovery of Hedviga Golik's remains became a national shock, not just because of the eerie way she was found, but because it exposed something deeply unsettling. How easy it is for someone to disappear in plain sight. The Croatian media covered the story extensively. Headlines questioned the system. How could this happen in a residential building? Where were the social services? Why didn't neighbors report anything for decades? But the more people investigated, the more they realized no one was truly responsible. And yet everyone was. Hedviga's case revealed a harsh truth about urban isolation. In growing cities, especially in apartment blocks, people often stop noticing each other. We share walls, but not lives. A locked door becomes just another closed space, not a cause for concern. Sociologists pointed to this case as a symptom of modern disconnection, not just in Croatia, but globally. There have been similar stories in Japan, the UK, and even the United States, where people died alone in their homes and were found years later. Hedviga Golik became a symbol of this silent tragedy, a person whose disappearance went unnoticed, not because of malice, but because of apathy. But even in death, she started conversations that were long overdue. People began to ask, who else might be missing right now? And we just don't know it. After the media storm, Hedviga Golik's name became known across Croatia, not for her life, but for the haunting silence that followed her death. Authorities conducted a final review of her case. The official conclusion was simple, yet deeply tragic. Natural causes, no foul play, no criminal investigation. She had likely died peacefully in her armchair, watching television, sometime in 1966. But her story didn't end with that finding. Her case was brought up in parliament discussions. City officials began reevaluating their policies around elder care, social welfare, and apartment inspections. In schools and newspapers, her name became part of broader conversations about urban loneliness and the dangers of disconnection. She even inspired documentaries and short films, not as a character, but as a symbol, the quiet neighbor you forgot, the missing person who was never searched for, the life that slipped through the cracks. In many ways, Hedviga Golik was not just a mystery. She was a warning, a reminder that even in crowded cities, someone can disappear completely and go unnoticed for decades. In death, she became something she never was in life, seen, and perhaps that's the strangest part of all.